For the PWA, I'd keep the architecture intentionally boring. A thin app shell, cached assets and data fetched separately. The shell should load fast enough that it feels instant, even if the network is doing its usual drama outside.
That makes sense. If shell is too heavy, users feel it before they even see content.
Exactly. I'm thinking HTML, CSS, Core.js, and navigation Chrome in the shell. Then the actual page data comes in through API calls. The service worker handles pre-cache for the shell, and runtime caching for everything else. Less magic, fewer late-night mysteries.
I like that. It feels safer than trying to cache the whole app like it's a snow globe.
Nice analogy. Also, if we structure routes so the shell can render them without waiting on data, we get a decent offline experience. Worst case, the user sees a skeleton state instead of a blank wall.
Skeleton states are better than silent. Silence always feels like something broke.
And it probably did, just in a less useful way. We should keep the shell independent enough that updates don't invalidate the whole thing. Otherwise, one tiny header change turns into a cache eviction party.
I've seen that party. It was not fun.
Which is why the service worker lifecycle matters so much. If we don't handle install, activate, and update carefully, the app shell can look stable while the cache underneath is quietly getting weird.
The update step is the one that always feels fragile to me.
It is. I'd use a version cache approach, with the new worker pre-caching its assets during install, then only taking over after activation once the old caches are cleaned up. That keeps the transition predictable. No half-old, half-new Frankenstein behavior.
That sounds comforting actually. Less chance of users being stuck between versions.
Right. For runtime caching, I'd separate strategies by asset type. Static assets can be cache first, API responses, might be network first with a fallback, and images could use stale while revalidate. The trick is not treating every request like it has the same personality.
Requests do behave differently. Some are needy. Some are fine waiting.
Exactly. And we should have a clear invalidation plan, maybe based on build hashes or explicit cache names, so we're not relying on luck. Luck is a terrible dependency. And once the cache is stable, the harder part is making offline data feel trustworthy. We need sync patterns that don't punish users for losing the network for 5 minutes in a ski lodge or 5 hours on a train.
Right, because if they edit something offline, they expect it to come back later without drama.
I'd lean toward an offline-first queue for writes. User actions get stored locally, then replayed when connectivity returns. But we need conflict handling, because two devices will absolutely disagree at the worst possible moment.
That part makes me nervous. Conflict resolution always sounds tidy in diagrams, and messy in real life.
It is messy. We can choose per entity, last write wins for low-risk fields, merge strategies for structured data, and maybe explicit user review for anything sensitive. The important thing is surfacing sync status clearly, not pretending everything is synchronized when it isn't.
I like visible status. It's honest.
Also, we should make sync idempotent so retries don't duplicate changes. The server should accept repeated operations without making a mess, because networks drop packets like they're tossing them into the snow. If the sync layer is solid, installability is the next thing people actually notice. The manifest is small, but it sets the tone for whether the app feels polished or like a browser tab wearing a costume.
That's a harsh but fair way to put it.
We need the basics right: name, short name, icons in the right sizes, theme, color, background color, and a display mode that matches the product experience. If it's meant to feel app-like, standalone, or minimal UI, usually makes more sense than keeping the browser Chrome around.
And the icons matter more than people think. A blurry icon on a home screen makes the whole thing feel rushed.
Exactly. Also, installability is not just the manifest. The service worker has to be registered, the app has to be served over HTTPs, and the user should have enough engagement for browsers to even offer install prompts. It's a bit picky, like a ski rental desk asking for 3 forms of identification.
At least the rules are clear once you know them.
Mostly. We should test across browsers too, because each one has its own opinion about what installable really means. And once it's installable, push notifications become the next lever for engagement, if we use them carefully. They can pull users back in, but they can also annoy them fast enough to make uninstalls feel personal.
Yeah, notification fatigue is real. People get protective about their screen.
So we should be strict about value. Only send pushes for things that are timely, actionable, or genuinely important. For the technical side, we need permission flows that are respectful, plus a server-side subscription model that handles token refreshes and expired endpoints cleanly.
I always worry about asking for permission too early. It feels like interrupting before we've earned the right.
That's the right instinct. Let the user see the value first, then ask. And for engagement, maybe use quiet reminders, badge counts, or digest-style notifications, instead of constant pings. A good push strategy is like good coffee, enough to wake you up, not enough to ruin the rest of the day.
That's actually a decent rule.
We should also make sure notification actions deep link into the right state, so the user lands exactly where the context makes sense, not in a generic home screen wondering why they opened the app at all. If deep links are clean, then performance becomes the final pressure test. Lighthouse will expose every lazy decision we made, which is rude but useful.
It is useful, though I always feel a little judged by it.
Same. I'd watch first contentful paint, largest contentful paint, cumulative layout shift, and total blocking time. For a PWA, the app shell should score well, because users should see something immediately, even if the data arrives later.
So the shell helps the metrics, not just the perception.
Exactly. We can trim the JavaScript bundle, split routes, defer non-critical work, and avoid shipping giant libraries just because they're familiar. Familiarity is expensive.
That sounds like every team's favorite mistake.
Also, preload critical assets carefully, compress images, and make sure service worker catching isn't masking slow code paths during local testing. A fast cache can hide a lot of sins until the cold start shows up on a real device in a real basement with terrible Wi-Fi.
Or on a mountain.
Or on a mountain, where the bugs feel even more dramatic.